is going to be a little bit of a detour. We're doing some side chats here. It's going to be a new segment. We don't have a name yet. We'll figure that out as we go. Maybe you can reply in the comments with some suggestions. But I'm here with my wife, Renata, and we're going to go outside the realm of what we usually do. And she is from Brazil. I'm from the United States. Obviously, there's a lot of different cultures, both musically and sports-wise. So we're going to pick a theme, a topic, each chat, and basically she's going to ask, what's the deal with that? So basically, for example, the first one, something that she doesn't understand at all, like most people from outside the United States do not understand, is college sports, especially college football. When I'm watching on Saturdays, she's just so confused. If I'm checking the scores on Saturdays, if I'm following my team, North Carolina, she's so confused why I care at all. Pretty much, right?
Pretty much. So, hi guys. Don't mind my English if I say anything wrong. Like, we're trying this at first to see if it goes right, and we're gonna have a little chat about this. And then I think the big question for me is why you guys are so obsessed with college football.
But first, why does it seem so weird to everyone?
And I'm gonna say about me. I'm not gonna say put it like the whole world.
I mean, everywhere I've gone that's outside the U.S., even people who love sports, they still don't fully understand.
Because for me, when you say like college football, it's something that you're not part anymore. Like, you're not part of the college. So after, like, I don't know, 7 years now that you're graduated, it's like, why you're still obsessed with the team. That is something that is...
Because they literally say, like, in their graduation and stuff, and like in the packets and the pamphlets, it's like always like for me, always a Tar Heel. Like, once a Tar Heel, always a Tar Heel. Like, are things like a Carolina family. Yeah, does it sound cultish? Of course it does if you really think about it. But when you pay $50,000 for out-of-state tuition, you know, there's a little bit of buy-in that maybe you want to do.
They're not giving you anything back.
Well, that's their thing. That's the whole spin. Like, of course, like, you're probably thinking about it logically, and yeah, maybe that is how I should be thinking about it. But when you're there, you get a little bit brainwashed. You buy in. It's like what every human wants to be, right? You want to belong to a community, and it's a sense of community.
Yeah, but okay. But I can understand. I cannot accept. I don't know if that's the word. But for example, you have like old people, parents. I don't know, people that are like up past 50s and they're still like cheering for their team. Like, I know that can sound confusing because, for example, you have a team of football, right? Like soccer. And then I understand because they don't give you anything back because you're not from your college or like it's from your city. Then okay, but
you're talking about like a club team from your
exactly.
city.
But like a college football is something because you already have NFL, right? So that's for me, that's the thing that doesn't match. You already have a league, a professional league of football, and you're still obsessed with the college football.
Well,
and they're kids. They're like college kids.
The kids part is the part I can't defend at all. At least when you're in college, you're a kid, so it's like they're classmates, and you're like, you may know that person, or there's something there. That part, once you're, you know, a 70-year-old booster and you're going to the games and you're throwing your weight around because you run, you know, you decided who the head coach was, or you helped decide how much his salary was. Like, yeah, that part, when you think about the people on the field.
Okay, I'm not going to discuss that. That's a completely fine for me. If I did the university in the US, I would be like that girl of like, I'm going to cheer for that and be every game and stuff. I want to be part of that. I'm talking about the past of like you graduated.
Once you graduate, yes. Well, the one thing is, too, a lot of the old people, they might be influential. Like, they might literally be boosters. So they're providing, the other spin on this, which is a whole nother thing, is a lot of these college programs are like, I'm not talking bad about it, but like kind of like churches in a way where they're always asking for donations.
Okay.
So they're always, especially like public universities, are always saying, you know, they can't make profits, so they're like relying on donations and stuff. There's a lot of like behind it of where the money comes from, because until now, although it's changed a lot with something called name, image, and likeness, where like players are allowed to get paid now. And now even it's changed even more where the school is allowed to pay them finally, but they're still not employees, right? They're still students. So there's a lot of like confusion and cloudiness about the money, like where the money comes from, because they're creating so much money from TV, like these games are on TVs, the ad revenue from TVs. There's so much behind it that when there's a lot of money, people like to get their hands in it, right? They want to, and also too, people use it, rich people use it as like a bragging tool almost of like, let me throw some money. I control, like I said, with the coaches and stuff. But the other big part about it, which is the main difference between, like you said, we have the NFL already, right? Like, why do people care so much about this? Is because the biggest teams, almost all of them, are in cities or towns that don't have an NFL team. So, like, you talk about the biggest programs of all time, like Michigan is near Detroit, but it's outside of Detroit, right? Like, it's in a place that they don't have anything else, and almost the whole community revolves around the college, and therefore the football is a driving economic force. So people's like jobs depend on the team winning and stuff. Like the whole economy changes depending on the team. And there's other schools too, like Notre Dame is not near a big city. USC is an outlier where it's in Los Angeles, and somehow they got really good, but now they've kind of hit a downside, and people think it's because they're not in a town where the whole town drives around that. Like you look at Alabama, which even you, I think, have heard of. Like, okay, Alabama is one of the more famous ones. Like, they're from Tuscaloosa. And there's a thing around it that, like, nothing gets reported about if they cheated or anything because everyone's jobs depends on the team winning.
Okay, but then you brought two things that like, is still something on my mind. That number one is being on TV, and number two, like, because it's, like, in cities that they don't have anything else besides the college football. I can understand that part, and like it's great because you're giving jobs for people and like something to be entertained by. But for me, the job part is okay. The part that like still something for me is like you're dealing with kids. You're dealing in a college. That's the part that I cannot.
That's the part you just have to look past.
I can't. I just can't. I can't. They're like it's very nice. You're putting in the small city something that can give like people something to live for, but you're dealing with the kids.
Does it make it better or worse now that they're basically professionals? Because like all of them are getting paid. Some of them millions of dollars now. Does that make it better or worse? Because like when you look at like a child actor, right? Like you watch a TV show, and sometimes like, oh, they're just kids, but they're getting paid. Like they just started their careers like way earlier than maybe they even should have.
But when you say they're getting professional, it's just because they're getting paid, or like people are taking care of these kids?
It depends where you go.
I have a question because I didn't do university here, and I know that sports is a big thing in the US. It's like one of like the ways that you get in a college, which I can understand or not, but that's not the point of the conversation. Is like, these kids are going to school or they're just focusing on football?
Depends on the kid and
But
depends on the
that's
school.
my thing, like, if you're
a quarterback tweeted once, he's like, we didn't come here to play school.
So that's the thing. Like, people, like, some people deserve the education, like, wants to be, like, in a university, and there is a kid that just because it plays football, like, you understand my confusion, like,
Yeah, no, for sure. That happens all the time. There are kids that they've said they've, like, changed it now, but their standards lower for a kid who's coming on a team, right? So for where I went to school, if you were out of state, it was already different than in state. Like if you're from North Carolina, to get into the UNC Chapel Hill, it was easier to get in if you were from out of state. Because of a state rule, they could only accept a certain amount. Then if you were an athlete, it was easier to get into both of those, right? Not easier because you had to earn the scholarship, right? That's a top tier school for athletics. It's really, really hard to go D1, which is the top division, like Serie A for college sports. It's really, really hard. So they earned it in that way. But the grades and stuff, the academic, the whatever you want to talk about, the merits of that. But those standards are lowered for athletes. So there is that where, like, yes, maybe they're taking spots. And even on campus, there's a lot of that. There's people who, like, don't care. Like, why should we care? It's messed up that, like, especially at my school, athletes were, like, not only that, like you said, are they taken care of? Like, treated like gods almost. Like, they got to get away with stuff, especially, like, you see in the higher levels, like football and basketball teams. Like, at the highest level, like, the University of Florida had one of the best football teams ever for a while, and their guys were getting arrested, like, left and right. And they were just, like, pushing it under the rug, like, oh, he's on the football team. Like, the cops had an understanding of, like, yeah, Dad, just clean that up, let's not talk about it. All for the football team. So, yeah, there's a lot of moral issues that come with college sports, even more so back then because there was, people on the side that's almost comparing it to, like, slavery, right? Because they're doing all this, they're creating all this money and not getting a cent of it. So you had stories of kids saying like they couldn't even feed themselves and stuff. Like a lot of that has changed now. They give a lot of like stipends. They even give more than just the scholarship. Like it used to be, oh, you're getting a scholarship. Like that's how you're getting paid.
Like you're studying for free, so you need to give me something back.
There's a lot of like, it's a purity of amateurism. You know, you just play to like how the Olympics used to be. Like you just play to win. You know, you win a gold medal, like you don't get paid anything from the Olympics.
Yeah.
But now, like you know, your country pays you, and you get ads and stuff like that. But there's a lot of that where you have this old mentality that's where it all came from, and now you see a lot of that has just been completely blown wide open, and now there's the best player of all time 10 years ago probably secretly got like a car and maybe like $500,000 cash, you know, given to him by some shady guy and whatever, and now they're outright getting paid. Like the quarterback for the University of Miami just transferred here. He got his cars plural stolen the other day. He got them back, thank God. And I'm not saying like he deserved this, but it was a Mercedes and a Lamborghini.
That's insane.
And he's a kid in college, and he's making probably, I don't remember his actual NIL deal, but like $4 to $8 million.
And then that's the thing that worries me. Like I'm gonna sound, I don't know, like an old mom saying this, but you're putting so much money into kids' hands, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy.
But that's the thing for me, like, you want to do this, at least give us, like, some financial
But that's
education.
a new thing.
I know, but it's not new when
the sport was not built on that.
No, but you understand, like, it's not new when you're giving kids money. It's like people in soccer, like, they're start at 18 and they're, like, signing contracts of, like, $1 million. That's not new in the world.
Correct, yeah.
But that, and then then you mix, like, education with the football and then money, like, that's something for me I cannot understand. Maybe I just don't want to.
Yeah, it's a very loose connection, like how it connects to the school. But that's how they get the tribalism of it, right? That's the main part of it, is like the tribalism. It's the closest thing we have to world football, or like European football or South American football, where, I mean, soccer, of course, but where you have that tribalism connected to it. Like the NFL has it too, but there's a lot of teams where they're even known as like not being great fan bases, or, you know, they don't have that fanaticism. And for whatever reason, we have that because there's a lot of like pageantry, there's traditions. The other part of it too is the NFL. Like the Super Bowl, we had I think it was 59 this year or something like that. So it's only been around like 59 years, right? Like Flamengo is probably, I don't even know how old, right? Like the history of European football goes back centuries. And for whatever reason, like football was invented here, American football was invented by the colleges. So it was a college sport to begin with. Like that's who invented football. That's where all the connections come from. So it's really, really old. So there's a lot of traditions laced with it. There's a lot of like, some of them are stupid. Some of them are crazy. A lot of them are crazy. Some of them like I buy into. Some of them I think are really awesome. Yeah. Some of them are insane. But there's a culture to it, which doesn't really connect with the NFL, especially the NFL. Like all the players even say like it's a business, and there's a little bit of it too, where you get these guys to play for something that, I mean, now it feels a little different. There's a lot more individuality with athletes and stuff, but especially with football, there's like a feeling of you're playing for something bigger, right? And people always love to like believe in that. They love to.
No, okay, but that's the thing that I don't get into. Like you're playing, you're in the college, you want to cheer, you want to do something that means something to you. That's completely fine. If you're in the university world, past that, that's something that that's the part of me that I cannot understand. Yeah. And then before we talk about like being on TV, that's something also blows my mind. I just remember that we went to FAU, I think, FAU game. And like even that, there was like not a big stadium. It was like a small stadium, but it looked like to the left where we were, and it was like a VIP area. Like
they had a massive skywalk.
That, for me, it's also another thing. Like, it's a college. Like, I understand, like, you guys have a, like, amazing structure for universities here. Like, you have a campus, something that we don't have in I'm going to say in Brazil.
Anywhere else.
Yeah. And, I mean, probably in Europe, some rich countries.
But no one does American college
like
campuses.
Here, yeah. And then, especially from Florianopolis, like, we don't have that. Like, we have a public university that doesn't gonna go 1% what it is. That's not the case in here, like, the conversation. But, like, I do understand. I admire that. Like, it's something that if I could, I would leave it, like, the full experience of a university in the U.S. and then you have like all the structure and like especially for sports with like I think sports one of the good things that you can do for yourself. But having like VIP areas, like a whole thing, it was like that thing was like gigantic for like a small stadium, and it was the first time that I've been in a college football. But then like I've seen others like you show me on TV that they build for specifically for college football. That's insane. That's insane. It's like number one like amount of money to do that.
Yep.
For something that doesn't use all the time.
The crazy part, yeah, that's the craziest part.
And then it's like, it's like my university does a stadium. Like
It's like 6 times a year that place is full.
I can say what the hell?
Yeah. I mean, the crazy part is, you can say whatever you want. The crazy part is that part of it, especially at public schools, well, one, like private schools, they can charge way more for tuition and stuff, and they don't have to tell anybody what they do with their money. So that's something, you know, that probably brings more money. It's like a business, right? Like that's an economic like driving factor. That thing is profitable. The crazy part is only in most schools, there are a couple outliers. Most schools, only the football team is profitable. The football team pays for the entire athletic department.
Okay, but just a quick question. The ones that we see on TV so far that I watch with you, they're public universities?
There's a mix. They're all mixed.
Okay, never mind. Make a stupid question because mostly here is not public, right? Because the schools are public, universities are private.
No, universities are public or private. Most of them are public.
Okay.
Anytime you see like state university, like Florida State, North Carolina State.
The one that you went is private.
No, it's public.
Oh, okay.
That's why they have the rule of like how many kids get in and stuff. Most of the schools are public, especially if they have like a state in the name. The Duke, for instance, is private. Miami is actually a private school.
Okay.
And a lot of the private schools, there aren't anymore, but originated as like some religious affiliation. Like Notre Dame, for instance, is a private school, like very Catholic. They still are, but there's a mix. So like they all compete together. Most of them are public. Some of them are private. But they compete on the same level. A lot of times the private schools have sometimes less resources even because the thing with public schools is they get government funding. Like they have an endowment and also too, like they're supposed to not be for profit. So everything, their whole spiel is everything they make and generate, they have to give back into the school.
Okay.
So an easy place to put that is into athletics, into football, into the football's making all this money. They got to put it somewhere. Put it into the football program. And then for a long time, they didn't have to pay the kids playing. So football team, it's changed now, but usually it has like 80 scholarships and like 100 players on the team. So that team's making millions and millions of dollars and none of them getting like a cent of it besides tuition and stuff. The coaches were making like millions and millions of dollars and the players were making like nothing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that where they have this money to put back into the school. So
okay, but I'm gonna go back to something that I said that I kind of understand or not. I don't remember what I said, but it's like, do you agree on people like kids getting like college kids getting paid for something that they do for the university?
Yeah. Now, yeah.
You got a scholarship by playing sports. You're doing that because you want to get to a good university and you're doing studies for something. Is it fair for you to get paid?
Some of them, yes, because they become like national figures. And also the main part of it is they're making so much money for the school that if they weren't there, that school's not getting that money. That economically, if you base it on like rev share, like what are you worth, right? Like what are you bringing? Your worth is like what you bring in based on like LeBron James makes more money than the last guy on the bench of the Lakers because he drives more, you know, he's worth more economically. There are people, it is very unbalanced, right? Like it sucks, but the backup goalie for the women's lacrosse team is not going to be economically bringing in the same amount of money as the star quarterback for the team, right? So there's a lot of disparity there where I can listen to both sides, honestly, where maybe they should all just I'd be okay with all of them getting a flat salary almost for like the season, right? Like the women's lacrosse player gets the same amount and then the men's basketball player gets the same amount. And one of the ways I don't know how they're going to distribute the money from the schools now that the schools are allowed to pay them. Like all the schools have like a salary cap now basically to distribute. And no one knows how they're going to really distribute because this is the first year that that's okay. But before, the way they got around it is the schools don't pay them anything, but each player can make their own money off of name, image, and likeness, right? So if like they can go on social media and make money themselves. So obviously, you know, a star quarterback is going to have a head start. He's going to make more money. But you see someone like Livy Dunn, who's a women's gymnastics person, and she's one of the most famous
in college.
Yes, but she's like one of the most famous because she does everything on Instagram and TikTok, and she created her own brand and generates it that way. So that's how they kind of got like the loophole around it of they don't have to be equal. So yeah, for me, it's yes and no.
If you do anything past the university, like when you do something private, personal, that's your job, that's your business.
Exactly,
like,
but before they weren't allowed to do that.
Even on social media?
They weren't allowed to get paid at all.
Oh, didn't. I thought it was okay.
That was something that changed. That was the main breaking thing of like the main tension of fighting back and forth was because they weren't getting paid anything. If they did something silly like that, they got in trouble. Like something as stupid as the Ohio State football team one time traded some of their gear and like stuff they got and like trophies for free tattoos. And that was illegal. They got in trouble.
Okay.
And then then there'd also be times where a team would like buy a kid a house for his family, but put it in like someone else's name or something, and like, oh, he didn't get anything, but meanwhile he has a whole house like for him, you know. So it is the inequality, just like most things that get to this level, is pretty sickening, probably if you like really, really looked at it, and very, very unfair. Even despite like Title IX, which is a legal law that right now is still standing, depending on how things go politically, but means that everything that you give to a male student or program has to be equal to a female. Okay. And that was it wasn't intended to be this way, but it became massive in the sports world, especially college sports, where everything, it's like, I'm not sure if private universities have to follow this, but public ones for sure have to give equal distribution to male as female. So like the football team has 80 scholarships. They had to create 80 scholarships for women. But they do have college football. But no, that's the thing. There's no college football for women. So that's why you have so many sports that became big sports for colleges, especially on the women's side, to match that, right? So there's a lot of schools that have women's soccer that don't have men's. It's changing now, but there's a ton of schools that have women's lacrosse that don't have men's because they have to match the amount of. There is any sports that women play that is getting as big, not as big as college football, but they are getting more attention that can possibly become like something on TV? Yeah, so lacrosse, soccer were two of the ones that the championship has been on TV for a while and is really, really popular, like a youth level, especially soccer. And our women's soccer team, as you know, is better than our men's soccer team nationally as the U.S. So there's a growth, and that was one of the reasons that why, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but one of the reasons why the U.S. men's team, like the national team, is soccer. Yeah, soccer has been so bad is because, wrongfully so, and almost like misogynistically, soccer was looked at as a female sport for a long time here in this country. Okay. It was because that was one of the few sports that they were like not allowed to play, but one of the easiest ones, right? Because you need like 20-something, 30-something girls to fill a soccer team. So that matches a little bit of the football team. So that was one of the things that why we're so ahead of also everyone in women's development. It's not just because like, okay, we're, you know, more advanced or more equality based or like we're better gender relations. Like obviously that's not the case if you look at the world in whole. But one of the reasons is because the soccer for whatever reason was like deemed more of like a women's sport. So our developmental program like started way before a lot of people. So that's one. Volleyball is growing a lot too. It used to just be the championship. Now like the last couple of rounds are on TV. The final four, so like the semifinals and the final, is in a massive basketball arena now that like sells out. So volleyball is growing, but the biggest one is basketball. Basketball is the only one. True. Depending on little schools, like some schools, like the women's volleyball team in Nebraska, like actually sells out an arena and makes money for the school. But that's very rare. Like our women's lacrosse team at North Carolina was amazing, but I don't think they even charged tickets. Like tickets were free. But women's basketball is one of the very few, if not only, women's college sports that is a revenue, like a profitable sport, like actually brings in revenue for a lot of schools. Like South Carolina, it makes more money than the men's team. Like little schools like that, like Iowa, like where my stepdad went, like they're one of the biggest. They love women's basketball there, and they just had Caitlin Clark, who was like completely broke open women's basketball and became this massive star that now finally, and people have been calling for this for a long time, if like you just put in the resources, like it could actually match it. And women's basketball is now, every game in the tournament is on TV, just like the men's.
Okay, that's cool.
Then also too, like just, it was sad how recent it was, but there was a video, because the men's tournament is March Madness, right? Which we fill out the bracket, like I've taught you that, and it's a massive thing, even though like people don't care about college basketball all year, still watch that. And they started doing the women's tournament at the same time. So there was a lot of like, no one's paying attention to the women's tournament because at the same time as the men's. Where there was a little bit of rebranding where they let it be called March Madness. And then there was one, I forgot, I think she went to Oregon. But there was a player who put a video out on Twitter of like the gym that they had, and like cut it with like the men's gym that her team, not teammates, but like her fellow students on the Oregon's men's team, like the hotel they were staying at and what they were getting. And the women's team was like really, really sad, like just a medicine ball in the corner and like some bands and nothing. And that went viral. So this whole college sport is very reactive, right? Like they don't give you anything. That's all just reacting to like problems until it finally hits them over the head of like, you should fix this.
That's everything doesn't apply.
Just
exactly. For the college.
So now women's basketball is like a big thing. Last year it set records. Like every game was the biggest, the most watched. So women's college basketball, I think, is at that point, and still room to grow because the men's is like $1 billion product for March. But there's definitely a lot of it too, where the men's product, like during the season, is honestly trending down. Like people don't care as much anymore, and the women's team is that very in flux, and the women's game is growing in popularity.
But going back to the college football, but it's like the question I'm gonna like ask is applied to all the sports. Like, what is the thing about putting kids on TV? Like how you like what?
Well, that's the thing, especially with football. It's not even about the kids. It's about the uniform. And there's two things to that.
What do you mean about the uniform?
There's two things to that. One, it's like the logo, right? Like you make fun of me every time I'm wearing a UNC shirt with the logo. Like you even know what the logo is. You never.
I'm wearing a kind of North Carolina shirt right now.
So
didn't want to, but it's okay.
There's that identity, right? Where it doesn't even matter. Like when you cheer for the World Cup, like you as a Brazilian, you know the biggest stars, but you don't know like the entire team. Correct. But when Lucas Paquetá misses on the goal, like in game one, like by game two, you know who he is, and like you're screaming at him, even though you haven't watched him play for West Ham all season, right? Because he's wearing the yellow shirt. So for us, it's the same thing. There's that identity of like, it doesn't, and that's the sad part too, of like people didn't care about who was actually in the jerseys, who was actually like making the plays. It was all just about the identity. There's a lot less of like, oh, it's not important about the people. It's about just the team, you know? People talk about like Iowa football has this identity. It's not even related to like the kids that are in there. It's just like plug and play and you play the same style. So it's very much about the identity of it. And that's changing now, like as they're getting paid and as, you know, even now everyone's like this, right? Where you have a brand and there's a lot more individuality and it's very much more individualistic drive of like, and you see it too, because now kids can move schools a lot, like much more freely.
What do you mean?
They changed the rules. So like it used to be in sports. Yeah, it used to be in like college sports, if you change schools. So like me as a student, I can transfer, right? Like I can apply to another school, have to wait till the next semester, but I can go and start doing classes if I get in. For athletes, if they did that, they'd have to wait a whole year till they were allowed to play their sport again. Okay. And now that's completely changed, where if you can change like tomorrow, and then if you get all the paperwork,
just people in the
everyone.
Sport. Okay.
But now it applies to sports too. So like, I can play for this team. Then next season, I was like, oh, this.
So they being traded, basically.
Yes, but without being traded, like they're making the choice. So now they have a lot more power, and the school has a lot less. So the schools are trying to catch up. Of like, here, take money. Like we'll embrace this, and it's a wild, wild west of like.
And when they started putting this sports, like college sports, on TV?
Before my time, honestly.
Oh,
like football has been on TV for a while. Not in the way that it is now, where you can watch a game in the middle of Ohio, you know, like from a small team, and that's on TV somewhere or that's streaming somewhere. that was not the case. But a long time ago, like the big stuff was on TV, and I don't know who picked it up first or who realized that this is something people want to watch. Like there's a way to make money, and they were even behind. Like the tournament starts with 64 teams, so that's 32 games in 2 days. They used to play like there'd be 8 games going on in like the first session, and they would only put like one channel on TV. That I remember. That was in my time. So you'd be watching one game, and there's like 7 other things that you're missing. And like now in this age, everything's on TV. They finally realize like this is literally billions and billions of dollars of product. Like just put it on, people want to watch it. I don't know when it really started or when they first picked up that this was like something they could make money off of. But yeah, college sports have been on for way, way back. Okay. At least football and basketball.
It's, how do you say, like it's been on more than I thought, like
for
longer time.
Football and basketball, yes.
Okay, for sure.
The other sports, that's a newer thing to like put them on TV.
Okay.
Do you understand a little bit more why I care, or that still doesn't make any sense?
If I'm being completely honest, like I'm gonna say the same thing that I said before. Like I can understand. I cannot fully accept the idea that people are still cheering for college football. I understand the whole.
And when you really step back and think about it, it probably shouldn't be. But that's the greatest thing. Sometimes don't make any sense.
Because for me, it's like we have a saying in Brazil, like that doesn't. I mean, I'm gonna say something. I need to explain the whole situation. But like, when you still make like kids jokes and dumb jokes, you say that you're still like in quinta série when you're like still in the like kindergarten, right? And some people like where you go to the university, for example, college, and you start fighting like you're fighting high school, and you're like, oh, it's still in high school, like these people don't evolve. And then for me, it's
there's
like
part of that, yeah.
You go to like you pass that, and then you're like living your life. You're 40, and you're still cheering, and you're like people don't evolve. Like
there's some people who think that, even Americans. So
okay,
what
do you think?
You just didn't marry one of them.
Think you didn't evolve?
I don't know. Well, part of me was like, I cared that much before I even went to college.
I mean, but
so
first of all, you love sports. Second of all,
growing up in Florida is one of the states where it matters more than the pro teams. That's another part of it too. It all depends where you live. So if you talk to somebody from the Northeast, they're not going to care as much.
But you live here. You went to North Carolina. How would that connect?
That was a whole different thing. I just didn't. I grew up here, so I hated the teams from here because the fans were so annoying, like in my ears all the time. Also, my dad's from Ohio, so I grew up an Ohio State fan. North Carolina was like kind of a random choice. It was.
But I mean, I can understand your point of view because you love sports, and then you did university focus on sports, and you became a sports journalist. Like everything is a sports for you.
Yeah.
So for example, with you, I can later understand of like how he's like working mentally, you know, like how. Like,
as you know, I didn't have that much of a college normal life. Like my life was sports in college too. As not even an athlete. So.
I know. That's why I'm
maybe
not
that
like
part's a little
pointing
sad.
it to you because I can understand. Like when you're watching sports on TV, in my mind, I can make the excuse of like, okay, it's like somehow he's working, but it's like people that are like not even close to sports and they cheer for the university. You know, a pass college.
That's fair. Some of them might be financially invested. Maybe their kid goes to the school, and that might be even worse for you. I don't know. But there's a lot, and a lot of it, like I said, is inexplicable. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
If my kid, I'm not going to say no because I don't know the future, but like if my kids go to university and he's playing, but that's the thing. If he's playing, I would cheer. If it's like just his university, I don't know if I'm going to go crazy and be like...
Yeah, for sure.
No.
But every sport's like that. When you like really think about it, there's a lot of ethical issues with cheering for your team. You talk about like just what we watched last week with the U.S. versus Canada in hockey, right? You're asking like, why are they fighting? Like this game doesn't mean anything.
We can take that in another.
There's a whole
video because that's also there's a lot of things in sports and like
it don't make sense. And that's the point of these talks. So that's what we're gonna do with these. I don't know if that cleared anything up for you. I've got a couple moments where you're like, oh, okay. So I'll take that as a win. But yeah, that'll do it for college football. I still did not convert her. We'll see if next time I can convert her on whatever topic she comes up with that she thinks as a Brazilian doesn't make any sense in this country. So thank you for watching.